Our intro music is provided by Kevin MacLeod at Incompetech.com.
You're listening to my friend Gary Anderson on My Dreams Talk Radio, the best in paranormal radio.
Well, thank you, John. I don't know if I'm the best. I don't know if I'm the worst, but I'm somewhere in between, which I guess that's not bad. Well, what can I say? Flooding in the Carolinas and all over East Coast. I mean, it is getting, I don't know. And some people are still saying we're not having earth changes. I still think Al Gore maybe was just too ahead of his time in trying to convince us that things are going on. Right after this, we're going to have Olav on our show. And, well, we'll see what happens here tonight. It should be a great, great night.
Night Dreams, Scary Story Night on Friday nights. Call in at 9:30 p.m. Pacific at 1-253-203-6695.
Yeah. Now, Olav, are you there tonight?
I am.
Okay, hopefully I'm saying it halfway right. I still got to get one of my teeth replaced after I knocked it out with my motorcycle. But anyway, how's your day been going?
It's been going pretty good. How's yours?
Well, I'm still here. I've been sick with the flu all week, and I'll tell you one thing. When you get older, the flu just kind of hangs on a lot longer. So I've been swearing I'd never get a flu shot, but I think I'm about ready to even go out and have it done.
Yeah. I tend to get them. I know there's a lot of conspiracy stuff that floats around about them, but when I don't get them, I get the flu. When I do get them, I don't. So, but I have a TV too, so.
Well, I don't know. I kind of enjoyed the first day being sick somewhat. Now that might sound strange because I got to lay in bed, and I canceled a couple days worth of shows and put replays on. It was kind of nice. The second day, yeah. I hate to say it, that we have a couple dogs that decided they wanted to be in bed with me, and, it got cramped. No, I didn't enjoy it after the second day.
Yeah, that always seems to happen. The first day you're like, oh, it's like a day off. The second day you're like,
No, I don't know.
I hear you.
Yeah, maybe I need a new bed, too. I'm fat, so it breaks down fast. So, what do you want to talk about? I'm really into wanting to talk about UFOs, the Space Force, sure. What Trump has did, and why all of a sudden. And, of course, I don't know what he's doing. He's doing a lot of things.
Yeah, he's doing a lot of things. When I first heard about the Space Force, that notion kind of already exists. I mean, there's a thing called Space Command inside the Air Force, and they handle a lot of the rocket launches and satellite control and like that kind of stuff. But when I heard the Space Force, one of the things that I thought to myself is, okay, by announcing this, we're kind of shifting the focus, away from what probably is the real quote unquote Space Force. Because it's like, oh, well, how can there be a secret space program? It's not secret anymore. Oh, look, they're going to have the Space Force. And you see, we should watch what they're doing there. Don't worry about all this weird stuff that they're doing.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, just the other night, I was on a camp out. I was on a Cub Scout camp out. And I was just walking out to the car. I have a bad habit when I go on camp outs and I'm away from a lot of electronics and whatever. I bring along a little shortwave radio, and I tune through the dial and I try to find number stations. And I was listening to Radio Havana for a while, which was a trip. But while I was walking out to the car, I saw what looked like a star. It was moving across the sky. Second time I've seen this, and it was moving across the sky, and then it got super bright, which is consistent with the satellite. And then it changed course, which is not consistent with the satellite. And, every time something like that happens, I look up in the sky and I see something weird, it reminds me that there's weird stuff up there and that, that's something that we should think about. And I think that idea of floating the Space Force was to kind of distract people.
I do. I not just necessarily about, UFOs and the Space Force and all that. I just think it was a distraction of what is all going on in Washington, D.C. right now. But,
Sure.
I know that we've been having things going on for many years. It was just kind of funny, how he joked around, a few months before he announced that he was going to try to create one. I don't even know how he could begin to, because our economy is going to, I hate to say it, the way things are going, I got a funny feeling it's going to go down quite a bit here in the near future. I mean...
Well, creating another branch of the military is actually very complicated because, you have to have an act of Congress to fund it. The Department of Defense has to create it. The Joint Chiefs have to organize it. I mean, it's not, as we've seen, there was an announcement that there's going to be a Space Force, and, it's like, where is it?
Yeah, well, yeah, and I got a funny feeling it might not go anywhere either, because, I mean, let's face it, I mean, if he can't get a brick wall, how is he going to create a new force? And the other thing is, the Air Force is totally capable of doing it, and who knows what they have right now. I mean, why spend the extra money to create another armed forces, when we have forces that can do it?
I talked to a guy once that had worked in DARPA, and when I asked him the question I always ask people if I run across somebody who worked at RAND or DARPA or any of these kinds of things, I asked them, I said, how, don't tell me anything to violate your security oath. I don't do whistleblowers. That's not what I'm all about. In fact, I could tell you a really humorous story about that, but I'm not all about that. I go through public research, public documents, looking for a needle in a haystack. And I said, so don't violate your security oath. I don't want to go to prison. I don't want you to go to prison. I just want to know one thing. I said, conservatively is a conspiracy nut when we all sit around and talk about DARPA and what it's capable of, right? So typically we say, well, it's probably 50, 60 years ahead of what we see today. And he goes, oh, no. And I said, okay, well, how far? He goes, oh, at least 100 or 150 years ahead in technology. So the stuff that you're using is from the 50s. The capabilities that inside of DARPA are way beyond that. I mean, they're 100 years out. And when you have the guy who was running the Lockheed Skunk Works, which is, built the SR-71 and the U-2 and a lot of these more exotic aircraft, when that guy goes, he was a Caltech guy, and he spoke at a Caltech alumni dinner that Jan Herzon, who's the head of MUFON, I guess he's a Caltech alumni, and he actually confirmed this. The guy said during his keynote speech to the alumni dinner, he said, not only do I have the technology to take ET home, I have the contract. And when you make statements like that, you're not talking about somebody who's fantasy prone. This guy's an engineer. He manages a whole lot of engineers working on very exotic, weird stuff. And, he's like, I have the contract to take ET home. Okay, well, that's an impressive statement to make. And probably, he's probably not lying. So you have to ask yourself, what are the capabilities that people like the Air Force or the Navy, people who are involved in avionics, what kind of capabilities do they really have?
Yeah, that's interesting, because it makes me just wonder, basically, our military, our aviation that we see right now is just mainly to show and not really anything about what it could be. We're in other words, you're saying we're even ahead if we compared the Wright brothers to right now and how much technology moved in this period of time.
That's what you're talking about.
Yeah, well, then that means we wouldn't be using rockets anymore. I tell you that.
They probably aren't.
No,
I would argue to you that the secret space program, they're using space planes that take off horizontally and just get up to a high altitude and then can boost themselves into orbit. I mean, look, we already see I think it was the Japanese just launched a mini space elevator, right? This is a thing that allows you it's basically an elevator to space. Well, I saw on a news report that the Japanese had just, launched, a mini, like a micro space elevator. It's like the technology is moving forward. But I think we have, well, you take Aurora, the Aurora, right?
Oh, yeah.
This is a very sophisticated aircraft that was really found out about in like the 90s, and its propulsion system is something called a pulse detonation engine, which, as I understand it, basically there's a line of fuel that goes out the back of the plane, and there's a laser that they use to ignite it, and it basically causes little explosions. It goes pop, 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 and that's how it moves, by these explosions, right? And what it produces is something called a donut on a rope contrail. So if you see an Aurora contrail, it'll look like a normal contrail with circular contrails every so far at regular distances. And if you see it at night, which I happen to see one at night, what you see is a series of flashes as it just goes barreling across the horizon. Now, the only reason that we know that the Aurora even exists is because somebody, when they were doing the Air Force budget, normally in the Air Force budget, they obfuscate black programs. So you'll see a chunk of budget, and then it'll just say, it'll just have a blanked out, redacted name. And the congressman who, on the Armed Services Committee and in the Budget Committee, they are given security clearances so they can see the name. Now, they may not see what the program actually is, but they can see the name, right? Or they're read in far enough to know some basics. It's an exotic aircraft program, okay? And that's basically all they'll know. And they'll go, okay, well, I'll give you $1 billion to go build it. Well, in this case, somehow through the process, the actual name of the program, which was Aurora, had not been redacted. So, as always happens with budgets, the minute the budget comes out, all the conspiracy nuts go and grab it. And I'm a conspiracy nut too. I don't think that that's a bad thing. I'm a self-described conspiracy nut. I don't think it's a pejorative, but and then a lot of watchdog groups will go out and get it. There are these groups that look through the budgets and they're worried about fiscal waste and that kind of thing. And they saw this huge budget for this thing called the Aurora. And then everybody got lit up and said, well, what's the Aurora? Well, it's classified. Well, what's the Aurora? Well, it's classified. And over time, more information came out. It culminated in a tester's model, so that's how we found out about the Aurora. But a lot of times that stuff's redacted. We have no idea what they're building.
Yeah, and I think that's really scary too. I mean, I don't know. I have my weekend host on Saturday, Michael W. Hall, the paranormal lawyer. He runs a local group. Right. It's called the UFO I-Team. And they go out and, try and investigate UFO sightings. They've actually got a lot of interesting ones. And even myself, even around 2000, I got my first hands on a pair of infrared binoculars. I was staring at the sky, and I saw some strange things that would go zigging really fast and then come to a dead stop and make a turn.
Ed Grimsley made a career of it. I mean, he's passed away now, but Ed Grimsley was using third-generation night vision, and I actually witnessed it. I was at the UFO X Fest. It's a